Glad you're here. Hey, let's start off with a little survey, can I? Little crowd participation. I'd like to begin. One question only. When you think of the stories of this man named Jesus, there were things that he did, perhaps that you heard of, that you read about. What were some of the things you think he did that really put him on the map? Go ahead, shut him out. Water to wine. That is one of my favorites, eh? Water to wine. Anyone else? Walk on water. Yeah, that was a biggie. Oh, fed 5,000. Yeah. Now, does it get bigger than that, hey? Raised from the dead, both a man named Lazarus and himself. Raised from dead. Let's put that in there. Anyone else?
Carried the cross like forever.
Sorry?
Carried the cross forever.
Carried the cross. Yeah, carried the cross. That was a big one. Sure. Man, you guys got up early this morning. This is impressive. Anyone else? His demeanor. His demeanor. And by demeanor, what would be some adjectives you'd throw into that?
The way he responded to everything. Everything that came his way was responded in a graceful way.
Okay. Responded gracefully.
His response.
Okay.
Intelligent, thoughtful. Storytelling.
Okay. Well, I'm not keeping up, but we got the point. All right. Yeah. He was just John in the spot with the way that he responded to things. Sure. It's great. Great answers. All right. You fed right into my hands there. That was excellent. No, I'm joking. This is exactly what I was thinking. Now, I'm gonna come back to that in a second. Let me tell you, when I was growing up, child of the 70s and 80s, one of the biggest action heroes of my day was a guy named Chuck Norris. How many are familiar with Chuck Norris? Come on, hey? Yeah. Why are we all laughing? Now that guy had it going on. You remember him? Yeah, martial arts champion. He was a 6-time undefeated world karate champion. No joke. He was the first guy in the Western world to be awarded an 8th degree black belt in Taekwondo. He was cast as one of Bruce Lee's nemesis, kind of opposing characters in a couple movies. But he went on crossing over into the big screen and did a bunch of his own movies. Maybe you remember him in Delta Force. Hey, you guys have seen these, right? Come on. Delta Force, Missing in Action, TV show Texas Ranger, Walker, Texas Ranger. I mean, this guy was just known for his tough guy image. He would just show up, and I mean, you just knew old Chuck was going to come through with the goods, you know? No bad guy was bad enough to not have old Chuck take care of him. But even after Chuck left the screen, I think it was around 2005, a guy performed a little bit of PR for Chuck, came out with the Chuck Norris facts. I don't know if you ever followed any of this, but he became an internet meme. And they just started promoting all these different things that he was about. You know, yeah, Chuck Norris, he doesn't sleep, he waits. I remember reading some of the boogeyman checks his closet for Chuck Norris at night, you know? Chuck Norris throws a grenade, kills 50 guys. Then it explodes. I mean, yeah, the guy is just, some of these statements about Chuck just were so hyperbolized and so ridiculous, but he took on this larger than life. If you never ever knew of Chuck Norris and you came across some of these Chuck Norris facts, you'd be like, who is this guy? Like, where did he even come from? Whatever. Well, it was like mythical, larger than life. Growing up in a Christian family, in a more of a traditional Christian environment, I was taught that the life of Jesus was kind of like Chuck Norris. I was taught a version of Jesus that was larger than life. Walked on water. Turned water into wine. I remember reading these stories just going, what? Holy smokes. Crucified, rose 3 days later. He was often spoken of as divine, the Son of God. So though he's walking around as a human, he's got powers, man. You didn't mess with this guy. He was showing up and living on another dimension that anyone else knew or understood. That was my understanding of him. And growing up, especially from a young age, that was kind of exciting to me. I mean, who doesn't want a larger than life spiritual action figure to kind of look up to know that the good guy won? But as I got older, the conversation started turning more to more like the challenge was to live like Jesus. How many remember the WWJD bracelets? What would Jesus do? Well, when you got an image of Chuck Norris Jesus in your mind, what would Jesus do becomes a pretty tall order. It's like, oftentimes I've felt in this place where it's like, man, Jesus, I'm trying. I wanna live like you. But I got some goose eggs under my name right now. I'm trying. But there are times when I'm just failing at it. I'm a little too human. There were times in my tradition where I honestly, it wasn't just me, it was like all kinds of people were coming in. There was this sense of I'm a little too human. I'm a little too un-Jesus-like. And even to this day, I talk to people who will come into church for the first time in a long time. And the running joke is, man, I don't want to get struck by lightning. But there is a sense of, I'm just not good enough because Chuck Norris Jesus and the kind of the tradition is a very high standard to keep. Have you ever felt that way? Have you ever felt like, man, living like Jesus, whoa, tough. There's this disconnect behind it all. You know, throughout the years, there have been these exhaustive efforts by scholars. In fact, there was one really big one a number of decades ago where they began to kind of explore the historical context and life of Jesus through a very critical lens. They began trying to separate what do we know of as fact about this guy named Jesus from maybe all the hyperbole, what could be hyperbole. We do know that the books of the Bible were written 70, 80, 90 years after Jesus was kind of rolling through. So there were stories that were, and that was part of that day. There's an oral tradition that was strong. And then eventually they got written down and they got put into books. But these historical scholars come in and just going, okay, wait a second. If we just try to weed through what we know of that day, what we know of the historical context, what we know even not just by the biblical authors, but all the other historians that were there at that time, a guy named Josephus, a guy named Tacitus, these guys that were writing non-religiously about the current affairs of that day. What were they saying about this guy? Well, these historical scholars started putting together kind of a picture of what they can say, this we're all agreed on that Jesus did or was. They all seem to agree that Jesus lived in first century Roman-occupied Palestine. No disagreements there. Born roughly between 4 before the Common Era, 4 to 6 CE of the Common Era. So somewhere in there, about a 10-year span, they figure somewhere in there he was born, died somewhere, they think, between 30 and 33 of the Common Era. So maybe Jesus on earth was anywhere from 26 to 37 years. They all agreed that he was from Nazareth in Galilee. They referred to him as Jesus of Nazareth. That was a common moniker he carried. Nazareth was a small village in Galilee, kind of in more northern Israel. He was known for being a political activist. He spoke up often for the poor and the oppressed. He challenged the religious power structures of the day, often. He was a wisdom teacher. He traveled around, itinerant. He would go from town to town, speaking in these short parables, these stories that contained all these powerful principles and truths. And in those stories, he would challenge people. He drew big crowds for this. Even the non-religious writers were saying, yeah, there is buzz around this guy. People are coming from everywhere to watch and listen. Often after he would be done teaching, people would leave challenged, confronted with their own ways of doing life. Sometimes and oftentimes, they would leave inspired to be something better. No arguments there. He was a Jewish rabbi, a rabbi capable of sitting with the highest ranked religious elites of that day, challenging them to consider the ways in which their religion had turned sour. He was never, ever shying away from looking some of these religious leaders in the eye and saying, I think you need to think twice about why you're doing what you're doing. But let me just put a kind of an emphasis. He was Jewish. He was a Jewish rabbi. I know despite the popular images of Jesus, more of a Swedish Jesus, blue-eyed, fair-skinned, blonde hair, despite what many have thought of Jesus, likely he was more like that. That is more of a common, more up-to-date rendering of what a Jewish, Middle Eastern Jewish man would have looked like. We have these conceptions of Jesus that kind of over time, and depending your tradition, really build them up into maybe a Swedish Chuck Norris Jesus in a certain way. But, if you start diving into the stories, even within the Bible, you begin to realize that Jesus, he wasn't just very Jewish, which maybe looks a little different. He was very human. I mean, this Jesus, he was capable of getting angry. Like the time when he got so heated up, he walked into the temple, he saw these people setting up shops, profiting off of people's spiritual devotion, selling different things, making money off of people's religious rituals. He got so angry. He's going, man, you're turning my father's house into a shopping mall. He grabs, it says some leather strip. He builds a whip, and he just starts like whipping these guys out of the temple, scaring them out. He's going, no, we aren't having this. Freaking. And I don't know, I love that about Jesus. I think if Jesus was here today, he drove into the Walmart parking lot and he saw that guy parking in that handicap spot without the handicap sign. I think he would go off on that guy, looking him right in the window, going, buddy, no, you're not. I think he was capable of, getting angry. I could go into that. But man, this guy could sleep too. I mean, Chuck Norris doesn't sleep, he waits. But Jesus sleeps. Jesus sleeps. Yeah, the one time he taught all day. He was giving her big crowds, and then he and his boys, they jumped into a boat, they get out, They're crossing over to the lake, and Jesus is so tired. He finds a cushion, and he crawls up, and he just out. Storm picks up. All of a sudden, man, waves are crashing over the boat. All the boys are freaking out. They think the thing is going to get swamped. And there's Jesus, just gone. In fact, they start shaking him, going, Jesus, we're going to die here. Huh? I can see him just like, I was sleeping so well. I don't know. I can relate to a Jesus who enjoys just a good nap. In fact, I bet today he would be maybe saying, you know what, don't discount this need for afternoon cat naps. If you need them, take them. I highly recommend them. There are times when Jesus broke down emotionally. I love this side of Jesus. This gives me all kinds of license. He had a close friend that died, and he said he just broke down weeping. There were times when he was so stressed and afraid emotionally that he begged his friends. He said, my soul is crushed right now. He had these moments of incredible emotional vulnerability where he was just like, I am broken, and I just can't have you leave me right now. Man, I love seeing these sides of Jesus. I'm just going, wow, in a day and age today where you are so celebrated if you're so stoic and so unflappable, this human Jesus, he was very quick to acknowledge the stress, the way it was building up. He was very quick to grieve and honor the emotions that were flowing, coursing through his veins. He had no problem doing that. Everyone seems to remember Jesus turning water into wine. I think this guy enjoyed a good party too. I bet Jesus, just judging from the way that he had his boys around him often, the times when he would just stop everything. A guy named Matthew, a tax collector, invites Jesus to a party one night. This would have been a party that most religious elites never would have touched. No rabbi was going to Matthew's house. But Jesus, what time are we talking? Yeah, we're in. BYOB? I don't know. But I'm betting Jesus is like, okay, I got the booze covered. Yeah, I don't know what he would have been doing, but he was there. In fact, he was there enjoying himself, and there were some of the stuffy religious people standing outside going, what is he doing in there? I'm betting throughout the short life of Jesus, he had so many incredible moments where he was laughing and talking, listening to the stories of his disciples as they were traveling, the nights they spent around the table talking. He loved being with his loved ones, friends. Enjoyed a good time. I love that piece about Jesus. I go, yeah, me too. Yeah, I can do that, Jesus. I can relate to this human Jesus. One last one. Often after spending tons of time in the public eye and with people, there were just times where he's like, okay, I'm done. I'm done being nice. My mom always says that. Okay, I'm tired of being nice to people, Jeff. I need my own space. I think Jesus, he knew his limits, and he had limits. It wasn't just like superhuman Jesus, I can do it all. No, he's like, whoa, that was a good one, okay. Even Jesus got emotionally fatigued, just needing a break. And he would just go, no, guys, I don't even want you to come with me. I need a break. It says he'd walk up into the mountain and be alone. It's like the guy understood his humanity. He would go up and be alone. It was like it was his spiritual recharge. He would pray. I don't know if he'd meditate, he'd breathe. He would be alone and allow the solitude to do something to him. He acknowledged, man, I can't keep doing that at that rate with all those things going on. I need time for me. I don't know if it was COVID that did that to me. I'm a high extrovert typically, but man, nowadays, I just love hearing that I'm going to have the house to myself. I'm just like, yeah. Just complete, not worried about anyone, anything. I just get to do what I need. Oh, anyone else like that? Just, and what that does for me. Yeah. When I start seeing these pieces of Jesus, I just go, okay, enough with the Chuck Norris Jesus. I need the human Jesus. And when I see this, I go, oh, well, maybe this spiritual life is more attainable. Maybe it's something I actually can live out. In fact, the way he designed his life and honored his humanity actually challenges me to consider the way that I am honoring my humanity. I'm not trying to be something more than I am in a crazy way. But actually, I'm taking time to really pay attention to what are my limits. What are the things that I need? I don't think Jesus was promoting a bunch of people trying to be more than they ever were or capable of. I think he was saying, no, you pay close attention to actually who you are and what you can do and what you can't do. No one's asking you to become something you're not. This got me thinking a lot. Because it's almost counterintuitive. The more I kind of understand my lane, understand what maybe I'm capable and growing and stretching, but really where my limits lie and how I take care of myself actually can lead to a greater spiritual impact in my world. I think Jesus actually promoted that. Let me ask you something. Have you ever considered what your present capacity is right now in terms of just the way that you are taking care of your life, honoring who you are so that you can bring your best self to the world, to your relationships, to your workplace, to your body? How would you rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 in doing that very thing? On a scale of 1 to 10, how well do you know what is your healthy limits? And making sure that you're taking care of yourself so that you are actually pushing yourself in a healthy way to present the best version of yourself. Scale of 1 to 10, what would you give yourself? You don't have to say it out loud. I'm just curious. Maybe more specifically, let's talk about physical health. How well are you sleeping right now? And maybe more importantly than just how well are you sleeping, how much energy and time and thought are you putting into how good you can improve your sleep? I sleep. No, but how much energy are you investing to try to figure out how to make it better? How well are you eating? Because this is all connected. How often do you say no to something you're going, I don't want to put that in my body? Or does no, is that a word when it comes to food? Something I'm wrestling with right now. Whether that's the kind of food, whether it's the amount of food, when you eat, how much energy just goes into just thinking about that equation for you? How about exercise? Now, these are obvious ones, right? What about your mental and emotional health? Over the last 10 weeks, we have spent time talking about our mental and emotional health through the internal family systems, trying to sniff out places in our lives where our parts perhaps are sabotaging our behaviors and our choices, leading us to less than our ideal. Why are we doing that? Do we give a rip about talking about psychological stuff here? Only to the degree that it leads you to showing up in your world in your best way, to your potential. Not Chuck Norris levels, to your potential. We go, if there's something getting in the way, then invest the time and the energy, do the work, so that actually on a scale of 1 to 10, you can say mentally and emotionally, maybe relationally, I actually took my game up from a 6, where I was like constantly living in this insecurity or this sense of resentment toward people in my life. No, I'm moving past that. And now I feel like I'm about 7.5. I'm not fighting like I once did with my partner. There's more peace. I'm more present. I'm actually not just talking blah, 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 with the people around me and going, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't even talk about you at all. You're present. Where would you give yourself on that scale? 1 to 10. How much capacity to be in your humanity, to be present to the spiritual opportunities that lie all around you and day in and day out? What is your capacity to show up and respond when you get that nudge? When all of a sudden you see an opportunity, when there's something that starts boiling over right in front of you, and your heart starts to race and go, oh, do I need to say something here? You know, as we approach the warm months here in Alberta and we begin to perhaps take more time for ourselves. I don't know what it is about the summer months, but it's just, everything slows down just a bit, doesn't it? Typically. Maybe not for everyone. But typically, I wonder if the very human life of Jesus couldn't serve as some kind of inspiration to each of us to be very intentional about how it is that we are replenishing, rebuilding, tooling up, expanding our human capacities to be players in the spiritual game. Do you know what you would do to increase your capacity? Do you know what things you could do that might enhance your human abilities to kind of be spiritual players? I don't know. I think for the number of people that are here presently in the flesh, and then those that are listening out there, there are a million different answers to that question. But I would like to just brainstorm just a few minutes before I close as to some ideas for you to think about trying over the next number of weeks that might, within your humanity, take your game up just a little bit. I don't think Jesus was pushing you to be Chuck Norris, but I think he could say, I think your game can come up a bit. Let's just talk about just some ideas, random ideas. Yeah, sure, mentor, absolutely. How about this one? How about just taking a walk or a hike for a very spiritual reason? Like in the Jewish tradition, Judeo-Christian tradition, they set aside Sundays as a Sabbath. And really, it was just like kind of going time out on life for a second. And everything that I've been doing today is to look internal, look within, open my eyes to something deeper and wider going on, and reminding myself why it is I'm doing what I'm doing. What if you were to take a walk? How many have pets that you walk on a regular basis? Okay, so some of us are doing it whether we want to or not. We got to get the dog out. But what if, and how many hikers are there? Okay, lots of you out there. All right, so you're doing this stuff already. What if you were to set aside one hike, one walk in a week? You don't take your headphones, earphones, earbuds. What if you don't invite your partner or someone who normally joins you? What if you went out and just said, this is my Sabbath walk, my hike? And I am, rather than just going to think about what I got to get done this evening, what's going on tomorrow, or all the different things that are going to normally occupy your mind, what if you just reined it in and said, who am I becoming? Perhaps you open yourself up and just notice nature around you and be present. What if you're just breathing and meditating along the way? You see, it can just be a walk, or it can be a walk. What if you looked at your digital life and you said, I am going to take an intentional fast. Maybe it's daily, a window of time where you go, between these times, screens are off. I am not paying attention. All the notifications on my phone are off. I am intentionally staying away from anything that way, to just notice my non-digital world. Maybe it means just going out onto the deck, balcony, down out front outside the building you live in, and just unplugging from everything. Let me ask you something. How often do you do that? Are you intentional about staying off this thing so that your senses can absorb something beyond the digital? Something to think about. What about the way we eat? I don't know about you, but I tend to eat very, let's get this done. I got to get calories, got to get this, and then what's the next thing? But what if you could just slow down and have a meal where you're just paying attention to that food hitting your mouth and the way that it's reacting in your body as you get partway into the meal? What if you started paying attention to the I'm full cues, how that's landing? What if, as you're eating, prayer one time, especially in the Christian tradition, was a big thing. You always prayed before you ate. That was a big thing in my family. At some point, I'm like, what's the prayer for again? Who's saying grace? It was one of those. But what if, as you ate, you just allowed gratitude for something in your life to just become top of mind? Even a meal can become a way of just allowing yourself to be more fully present. What about your sleep? Let's talk about that. Prioritizing one full night of rest. One full night. That might be a tall order for some. One full night of rest a week. Now, maybe it's not that. Maybe it's 4 hours. Okay, great. Whatever that looks like. Maybe it's 4 nights a week you're going after it. But one in which you get so intentional about saying, I am giving my body a fighting chance tonight. I'm turning off the tube way earlier than I normally do. I'm getting off my phone way earlier than I normally do. I'm just going to go for a little walk, decompress, maybe take some magnesium, whatever it is, whatever the ritual is that helps you, and then you just practice such strict sleep hygiene that you give yourself a shot at bringing out the best you within your human limits. Because if you don't think your sleep is attached to your spirituality, you're smoking crack. And I am dead serious. If you're not sleeping well, good luck living like Jesus tomorrow. It ain't. That's my story, man. I'm telling you. I'm fighting my demons after a bad night of sleep. I'm just like, oh, don't say the wrong thing to me. Man, I get my sleep. It's like just giving me a little bit more superpower. What about creativity? This is something we don't talk very much about. Some of us renew by creating in artistic ways. Something magic happens when someone builds. They create, they write, they sculpt, they draw. Do you have some side of you that just craves some kind of artistic expression? Maybe you've gotten so caught up in the mundane or the robotic, necessary, utilitarian tasks of your life that you've snuffed out these parts that will re-energize you and recreate something inside of you. Maybe this week you got to set aside some time where you're just going, I am going to do something that enlivens my soul like nothing else. And I'm going to create something. I go out in the garage and I build, sometimes just knick-knack and repairing something. It's my happy place. I love it. And it does something to me. Almost something as magical and spiritual as a game of golf. It's like the Lord just shines down and opens up. Yes. One last one. What about relational touch? This could be setting aside time to reconnect with someone. I see Jesus. The stories where he would be sitting around a table and someone would interrupt the meeting. And often it was different characters. One night it was a woman who didn't have the best reputation. And the people he was sitting with, some of the Jewish leaders, were all indignant about it. They're going, what is she doing here? But she wanted to be close to Jesus. He knew the power of relational touch. He knew that it did something for people. And I can just see the moments, the many moments where just in the most beautiful ways, he would just look someone in the eye and just say, I see you. No one sees you, but I see you and I know what's going on. And you're okay, man. You're okay. Come here. Come on. Give me a hug. I could see the kids and parents are wanting their kids to come up to him and everyone's going, get the kids away. He's got busy. He's got things to do. He said, no, come on, bring him here. I just see these sides of Jesus. I just go, yeah. How much time am I making for these spontaneous phone calls? Times where I can just look at someone and just say, hey, whoa, you all right? And I know I need to be somewhere, but just being able to just stop for a second and just say, come here, you okay? What's going on? Hey, let's celebrate. I heard something you did last week. I don't have much time. Come on, I just want to shake your hand. I want to give you a hug. Congrats. How many things do we see that are just powerful moments, opportunities for relational connections that do something? They can fuel something inside. This is a kind of spirituality that you don't have to be Chuck Norris to do. It's something that will recharge and replenish, especially some more than others. Get it? Even you introverts, don't doubt. Don't doubt for a second. You may not need a crowd to do it, but a hug from one other person, a chat with one other person, a meaningful exchange. Don't be fooled how important that can be to your own spiritual well-being. Today I celebrate that as a spiritual leader, I can stand here on a Sunday, not having to pretend I'm some Chuck Norris. From day one, we always determined this will be a stage. The speakers of this community, the people that put themselves up in front of you, will never stand up on some high horse, some fictional high horse, acting like we know what we're doing and that we got this mastered and we're speaking from mastery. You know us well enough to know that ain't the truth. But we are continually trying to point out we're humans trying to do our best to live in a way that is stretching our capacities, but within our human limits. And I celebrate that today. I'm not calling you to Chuck Norris spirituality. I'm not calling you to something important. I'm calling you, I believe Jesus is calling you to something you can do. And maybe this next week you can do it just a little bit better. We don't use our humanity as an excuse, as a disqualifier, but perhaps as an inspiration to know, man, I'm not being expected. The spiritual is not reserved for only those who live at a certain frequency and are able to do certain things. No, the spiritual world and life is available to every one of you, and I don't care where you've been. I don't care how much water you can take right now. I don't care what your financial situation is like. I don't care what your marital status is. I don't care what your addiction is. I don't care what skeletons you got in your closet. The life of Jesus looks you straight in the eye and say, you got enough. Your humanity is all I need. Now step up. So the challenge today is, will you take care of your humanity? Will you replenish yourself in a way so that you can take the best of your humanity forward and make a difference in your world? May you use your time this summer so wisely. May you take a walk with a different level of intention. May you eat a meal today just a little slower. May you get on the phone and send a text with a little more intention, or a phone call. Yeah. All right, that's week 1 of the GOAT. There's some good advice from Jesus, hey? Yeah, oh yeah, that's some good advice. All right. Vince is up next week. What are you talking about next week, Vince? Sage? No. Do you hear that? I didn't. Okay, no, it doesn't matter. It's going to be good. All right, it's going to be really good. Really good. Have a great week, everyone. We'll see you back here next Sunday.